Welcome, everybody. I'm Faye Gersh. I'm the founder and current president of the Hemlock Society of San Diego. Welcome to the 468th monthly meeting of the Hemlock Society of San Diego. Well, maybe there haven't been exactly 468 meetings, but over our 39 years of existence, we have tried almost every month to have a meeting to bring information about ways for people to achieve choice, dignity, and control at the end of their lives. We try to educate the broader community, many of whom do not live in San Diego or in California or even in the United States. At least we talk to the people who acknowledge being mortal. Even if you're not planning to ever die, it doesn't hurt to keep your options open. So pay attention. We started as a chapter of the Hemlock Society USA, founded in 1980 by a visionary British journalist, Derek Humphrey, who helped his cancer-stricken wife die and then wrote a book about it, Jean's Way, many of you have read. Derek himself died this year after a long, I'm not going to say illness because it's more important that he lived, a long, productive, and well-lived life that continues to be beneficial to people all over the world. The two objectives of the Hemlock Society were and are to let people know all their choices at the end of life so they can be consistent, they can die consistent with their values and beliefs, and within the restrictive confines of the law, which we struggle to expand. His famous, maybe notorious book, Final Exit, which you can't see because, anyway, I'm holding it up, taught us some reliable, painless, do-it-yourself methods that many people rely on even now. Our laws, where they do well, only apply to people who have 6 months or less to live and are able to self-administer the bad-tasting medication, are still compos mentis and dwell in the right states. So that's very restrictive. We no longer have the National Hemlock Society, though Hemlock Society of San Diego has members around the country. But as the last active Hemlock USA, we started the Caring Friends program, where trained volunteers, Hemlock members, would go to people's homes who were looking for help and instruct them in some of the methods in Derek's book, especially the inhalation of inert gas, a quick, painless way that does require some dexterity and equipment, but otherwise is fairly easy to self-administer. When Hemlock USA was disbanded, some of us, including Derek and me, started the Final Exit Network, now a 20-year-old thriving organization that does not require terminal illness on the part of a person to use its services. We may continue searching new methods since expanding the eligibility for the law may take decades. Legal change is slow. We believe in good life, good death, in whatever ways can be achieved. Final Exit Network, or FEN, helps people through its Exit Guide program, which you'll hear about now. That's why you came. Jim Van Buskirk memorialized the experiences of many compassionate and courageous FEN members who, as guides, are with people who choose to end their lives this way. These are described in his new book, there at the end. And again, you can't see this one. This book will be available to you if you want to buy it, which he and Jenny will talk about more than I will, I hope. Guides neither provide the means or physical assistance, but their support is invaluable to the dying person and her loved ones, and is a life-changing experience for the guide. I was one, and am forever changed by being at these bedsides. I have a special memory of one woman who had a crucifix over her bed and held her Bible as she died peacefully, inhaling the nitrogen. Her chosen death, she told me, made her merciful God happy. Jim and Jenny will be introduced by Hemlock and FEN board member Chris Palmer. Chris?
Thank you, Faye, and welcome everybody. I have the honor of introducing my friend Jim Van Busker to all of you. Can you all hear me okay? I'm hearing some noise. Okay, so please put yourselves on mute If there's noise in around you, please put yourselves on mute. So Jim Van Buskirk, you can see him right there in my screen. He's in the upper right. He may be somewhere else on your screen, but Jim Van Buskirk has co-hosted Death Cafes for many years, and he volunteers with Final Exit Network, which Faye was just mentioning to you. He volunteers with Final Exit Network, or FEN, as a regional coordinator, which is a critically important job with FEN. In that role, he counsels callers on end of life options. He also co hosts FEN's Chosen Death Forum, which, if you don't know anything about, it's really worth learning about. He co-hosts FEN's Chosen Death Forum. He participates in FEN's Speakers Bureau. He's one of FEN's well-known speakers, and he reviews relevant books and films for FEN's quarterly magazine. To commemorate FEN's 20th anniversary, Jim edited, and you already heard this from Faye, Jim edited this book. This book is called There at the End, subtitled Voices from Final Exit Network, a celebration of 20 years. He put out this book to celebrate 20 years. It's a fantastic book. I really recommend all of you read it. It's got a wonderful blurb on the back from the famous Thad Pope. Thad writes, FEN's cardinal virtues shine through in this collection of compelling cases shared by clients, founders, and volunteers. It also contains a blurb on the back from me, which I'm proud of. There's a wonderful essay in here by Faye, which is really worth reading. And there are several essays in this book by Jim himself. It's a wonderful book, and I strongly recommend it to you. Now, Jim is an amazing guy, but let me mention three things which you will not find on his resume. You won't find these on his resume, and I'm telling you these things because they will give you more insight into the admirable character that he is. First, long fascinated by movie locations, Jim co-authored Celluloid San Francisco, the film lover's guide to Bay Area movie locations. And he frequently presents clip programs on San Francisco icons in the movies, including the Golden Gate and Bay Bridges, Alcatraz, the 1906 earthquake, and his brand new one, Cable Cars. The second thing I want to tell you about him, which you won't find in his resume, is after learning at the age of 55, I know he looks about 30 now, but at the age of 55, after learning that his maternal grandparents were closeted and assimilated Jews, he immediately embraced his newfound Jewish identity and began researching his family history. And the third thing I want to tell you about him, he was the founding program manager of the James C. Hormel LGBTQIA Center at the San Francisco Public Library, and co-authored the book Gay by the Bay, a history of queer culture in the San Francisco Bay Area, to coincide with the opening of the center. Jim, we are honored to have you with us today. Thank you so much for coming. I want to ask all of you to put your questions, please, in the chat. You can get, if you don't know what that is, just go to the bottom, just take your cursor to the bottom, look at chat and open it up. You'll see there's some points already there. And so put your questions in the chat. We want to have lots of questions. Jim wants to have lots of questions from you. So think of questions as he's talking. Please put your mics, as I've said already, on mute. Jim, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you. Let me quickly check with Faye, Christy, and Janet. Is there anything else to announce before Jim takes the stage? Okay, Christy is shaking her head. Thank you. So Jim, we're delighted you're here. I'm handing the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. I don't think I've ever had an introduction like that. And thank you, Faye, for making this happen. And I don't want this to sound like the Jim show, because it is not the Jim show. It's the Jim and Jenny show. So Jenny and I have been friends for over 40 years, and we reconnected at a Fen training. So Jenny, please introduce yourself and tell them tell them about you and about us.
Well, first, Jim, I'm just so extra honored to know you. Like I like all the stuff that I didn't even didn't even know about you. It's so refreshing. I did know most of it, but anyway, it's um Jim and I have known each other. We met in college and we actually used to go to cemeteries with like a mutual friend, and we used to, I don't know, never squeamish about death. It's always been something that has been in the back of our minds, and we've embraced. I am a senior guide with the Final Exit Network, and I was actually trained by one of the people who's here today. And I don't know if that person's anonymous about it, but anyway, I don't know if that person remembers, but I just want to say thank you for your help. Um, and I am a senior guide. I don't know if there's anything else I need to say right now.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, and just to be clear, this is not my book. This is Final Exit Network's book, and I'm so pleased and proud to have had a hand in it. Jenny has a piece in it, which she's going to read from in a little bit. Faye has an essay in it. Chris has blurbed it. Um, so it was certainly, it took a village. We had a whole team uh, under the auspices of our recently I won't say departed, because Mary Ewart is still very much with us, but she's no longer executive director, and we now have a new executive director. So, and the reason I thought it was important to compile these essays, which are all very personal stories. So there's no politics, procedures, polemics, products. There's nothing except personal narratives about what Fen does, who its volunteers are, what an end of life scenario might look like, a few cautionary tales, don't let this happen to you, letters of appreciation from family members, letters of gratitude from Fen clients. So it really, I think, brings us out of the gray area of what we do and have been doing for 20 years and into the light, so that people have a better understanding. Um, so, Jenny, do you want to tell us how you got involved with Fen?
Sure. So I got involved because of a family member. My mother had a medical crisis and she didn't want to live anymore. And she was like, I'm just going to take all the pills in the house and I'm going to like drink it down with all the alcohol I have and I'm going to kill myself. That really didn't make sense to me. And luckily, this crisis got resolved. And afterwards, I said, I understand and I totally agree with your value of not extending your life past when you want to, live, but we have to have a better way than just flip-flopping around about like what kind of drugs do we have in the house that I can take. And, as her support system, her daughter, it made me very nervous that she didn't really have a good plan. And we actually looked up Hemlock Society, and that's how we found out about the Final Exit Network. And we bought that book and we both read it. And my mother put together her kit. This was back in the balloon party time, helium days. And she had it ready to go when she needed it. And my mother, I wrote a story about this, which I'll read part of. My mother did end up dying, but the final exit thing fell through. It didn't work for various reasons, and it was really stressful. She had 4 attempts before she died, and luckily none of it was messy. She died peacefully, but it was a 2 week period of just like, oh my God, I'm calling, she's still alive. It was so nerve-wracking and so upsetting. Um, and I joined Fen after my mom died, and there was a call for volunteers, and I'm like, oh, this seems interesting. I was newly retired. But I didn't really think I would be accepted. I was a former graphic designer, I thought, oh, therapists and doctors do this, and nurses and, healthcare people. but I got accepted, and I really enjoy working with people, and um, I don't want others to have to go through what I went through and what my mom went through. And I feel like by being a guide, I can provide people with confidence that they are going to, you know, get what they want. And I have my own little saying, which is everyone dies on my watch. Like they're not going to be, nobody's going to be left in a coma. It's going to work. So did I answer the question, Jim?
Yes, that was great. And just tell them the story of how, because Jenny and I have known each other for decades. We live not too far from each other on the other side of the bay, but we sort of lost touch a little bit. So I get a call from Jenny. Tell that story.
Oh yeah, so after I got accepted, I'm like, I talked to this person and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many other people are coming from California? And she's like, one. I'm like, oh. And she goes, and he's in San Francisco. And I'm like, oh my God, is it Jim Van Buskirk? Because I knew he was already involved in death cafes. But how random is that? That the one other person in California happens to be somebody that I know and have known for a long time. So anyway, we even traveled together. We went to our training together and we stayed in Chicago longer. And we went to a Madonna concert, which we thought started at like 8 o'clock, but didn't start till like 1 in the morning. And it was really crazy, but we had fun. Anyway.
That's the story I love. And I got involved through a different way. I met a woman at a death cafe, and I'll read from that story in a little bit. And she invited me to. She said, "I've applied to Penn. I've been accepted. The guides are coming next week, and will you be with me?" And I sort of took a deep breath and thought, yes, I'm honored, and then had no idea what I had just agreed to. Uh, and so I'll read that. But Jenny, why don't you read an excerpt from that piece by Lowry Brown, which sort of I think sets the tone for Ben and what we do.
Yeah, and Lowry is our boss. So
Yeah, so we have to. And Lowry's made a wonderful presentation to Hemlock Society of San Diego. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, it's really, really great.
yeah. So her story is called "The Right to Write Your Own Life Story," by Lowry Brown. She's the Exit Guide program director. A growing number of us feel that when the time is right for us, death should comfortably be in our own hands, not in the hands of doctors or lawyers, priests or politicians. We want to be able to end our own lives in our homes at the time of our choosing, without society getting its collective knickers in a twist that our considered personal choice is somehow an affront to, and I stumble here, how things are supposed to be. We are supposed to be living in small bands, hunting and gathering and dying long before the age of 30. Let us dispense with fanciful imaginings of what is supposed to be, and instead consider what makes sense. Let us also dispense with any romantic notion of a natural death. We have always done everything in our power to wrestle death from the hands of nature. I had severe pneumonia as a newborn and was in an oxygen tent for days. That would have been my natural death. I took another stab at it in my 20s with a climbing accident that without medical intervention would have finished me. Whatever road I take, it is way too late for it to be natural. At a less philosophical level, is either life or death natural if you have medication supporting your circulation, or oxygen supplementing your breathing, a pacemaker guiding your heart, a caregiver spooning applesauce into your mouth because you no longer know how to feed yourself? And there's more to her story, but get the book and you'll be able to find out the ending.
Thanks, Jenny. And I placed that essay at the front of the book after Faye and Derek's introductory essays, because I thought it really was a strong argument against the detractors of people who don't believe we have the right to choose the time of our death. And as I said, the stories all unfold. Most of them are by volunteers. Many of them have appeared in various issues of the Final Exit Network quarterly magazine, and together they really create a portrait of the organization. And so Jenny and I work uh, in different roles. I'm a regional coordinator, and she's a senior guide. So I don't believe we've ever worked on the same case because my territories don't overlap with hers. But do you want to, maybe I'll say what the regional coordinator does, and then because it's, so if someone were to contact Fan through our website or by phone, all of those contacts go to all the regional coordinators, and then we select our region. And my region includes Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Montana, the Dakotas. It's a huge swatch of the country, but the number of calls I feel are not that overwhelming. So I call the person back and ask them, tell me what's going on, or ask me questions. How can I be of support? And sometimes I get a long, long life story, including seemingly every office visit, every relationship, everything. And other times people are not interested in sharing their story. They just want to know, what does Final Exit Network do? Or what are my options here? And how does it all work? And so I explain various options, including voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, the current status of Swiss clinics, are they in a medical aid and dying state? And then if they choose, and I explain, as Jenny's mom did, I recommend the Final Exit 2020 ebook download or the Peaceful Pill handbook put out by Exit International, saying this inert gas modality is totally doable on one's own, but I tell them, don't make a mistake. Because many times I've gotten a call from people saying, oh, I tried this and it didn't work. Now what do I do? So if they apply, and the application process is, we recommend doing it within 6 months to a year of when the intended exit is. And it's basically just a letter saying, this is my situation, medical records, a telephone interview, and then it goes to FEN's medical review committee. And usually it's approved. Sometimes they want more documentation. And once in a while, the medical review committee can't approve the application because there's something that might put the organization or its volunteers at risk. But assuming that the application is accepted, then Lowry identifies an exit guide who could be Jenny, and she takes over. Do you want to say what that looks like, Jenny?
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing. It's to me that it's really amazing. The bulk of the, I mean, the huge bulk of the applications that come in are from California. I mean, if you look at the percentages, like we always have these little charts that show it by state, like California's like this and all the other states are like this. And even though we have medical aid and dying here, we still have a huge amount of applications for Final Exit. So as I talked about before, my reasons for becoming a senior guide, and I started out by doing the interviews, like I would call people who had applied just to get more information, and then I got trained as an associate guide, and I've been working with Final Exit since I think 2019, but the pandemic kind of slowed everything down, so it took me a while before I actually got my senior guide wings, but I've been doing this ever since. And I get, my coordinators will send me, ask me if I'm available to do work with a new client, and I usually say yes, and I read their application over, and then I give them a call, and we just start talking about process and when they're thinking about exiting and things like that. But my main thing is that I train people how to put their kit together, and I lead them through a practice. And then and that's called an education visit. And this is done in person, and I have an associate guide with me. There's always two of us there. And then when the person is ready, they contact me and we do an exit. And some people I'd say maybe about 10% of the people that I work with want to just do it on their own. And sometimes I'll talk to them the night before, just to go over the process to make sure it's all clear for them. But most people have us there. And at the exit, they, do everything themselves, and they are, I just make sure that they are following, all the steps correctly. And, I can hold the person's hand if they want, and I'm with them. So, it's not against the law to teach someone how to kill themselves, and it's not against the law to be with someone when they're killing themselves, but it is against the law to provide physical assistance. And what physical assistance is has not been determined in California. So we are very careful not to touch anything. It's only, I tell people, the only fingerprints on this equipment should be the client's, because we don't want anybody getting into trouble. And I also work with people's families. We want to make sure that we don't have any angry relatives who come out of the woodwork later on who want to try and sue Finn. So we make sure that we talk to family members to, make sure that they're on board and to answer any questions that they may have. So I think that's part of it, most of it.
But talk a little bit about discovery, because I think that's important, that the process can't be interrupted, but by the same token, we don't want the body left unattended.
Right.
So
I mean, I didn't know how much detail we're going into. So
just a little bit.
okay, so that's one of the things that we do is that we usually do this in people's homes. We don't do hotels, it's like don't worry about your property value. We want to make sure that we are in the privacy of your own home, and we want to make sure that no one finds the body who shouldn't be finding it. No, poor hotel maids that come stumbling upon you. So we always work out a process for the body being discovered, and most of the time it's the day after the person actually dies. I mean, even though what the guides are doing is not against the law, I don't exactly want to be there when, law enforcement shows up. So we are gone, and usually if the person has lived by themselves, we get a family member or a friend, often like out of the area, who will call the police department in the person's city and say, I tried calling my friend this morning. They're not picking up. They told me they were planning on taking their life. Can you please, I'm worried about it. Can you please go check? And we want people to be very honest about this. We don't take the equipment away. It's going to be left there. It's going to be a known suicide. And I don't know, Jim, is there anything else
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
because I think that's an important part of the service. We don't want anyone traumatized. We don't the guys help making sure that nobody is at risk. Um, we counsel them if should they be interrogated by law enforcement. Um, and a couple of go ahead, Jenny.
Well, I mean, we don't give legal advice. I just want to be clear.
No, yeah,
But we want everybody to just tell the truth about what happened. Don't offer any, or just answer the questions that the police ask you. Don't offer up any extra information, but just, be truthful about it. And for some people, that's really hard. They don't want to do that, and we won't work with them. I mean, they need to be able to talk to their families about this, and and it can be hard, but that's part of our job is that we counsel our clients about how to talk to people about it. And a lot of situations where people are like, oh, my religious sister's never going to be able to do it. She's not going to be able to handle this. Well, surprisingly, a lot of religious sisters can get on board. So, they just need to be approached in the right way.
yeah, that's a really important. And I have an example of that. I was working with a woman. She applied, was accepted, but she absolutely refused to talk to her daughter, who was the executive of her estate, and who the client was sure was not going to be supported. And the exit guide made the difficult decision: we can't move forward. We can't support you. And I had been working with this woman, as I say, for a long time. She was furious with the exit guide, not with me, but with the guide. And I felt really bad and offered some other options. Well, fortunately, this particular story has a happier ending because about a year later, I got a call from the daughter saying, well, what's up? Why couldn't my mother move forward? I'm on board. Or no, I guess I left a part out. The client took all the pills, attempted suicide, was not successful. And the daughter told me, well, I know she's going to keep trying until she gets it right. I love my mother. I don't want her to leave, but I'm going to support her. And that's all it needed for the exit guide to be able to get the project back on track. And I just got word a couple of weeks ago that the client passed peacefully and swiftly. So it's a process. Sometimes we can anticipate red flags, sometimes they can surprise us, and sometimes they can be worked through.
Can I say, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
And this is not a quick process. We don't deal with emergencies. I would say for me, the fastest anything's ever happened has been 2 months, but often, it's much longer. And I just wanted to say that.
Yes, no, good. And the other thing I wanted to clarify is, so as Faith sort of indicated, medical aid in dying here in California, and it's the same, pretty much the same uh, law, requires a terminal diagnosis and a 6-month prognosis. And not everyone has that limited um, can meet those criteria. So Final Exit Network has a little more latitude. We can support cognitive decline, we can support neurodegenerative diseases, and a category that we call constellation of conditions, or that might be called a completed life. So somebody's in their late 80s or 90s, they're losing their eyesight, they can't drive, they're afraid of falling, everything's going south, and they might well qualify.
Also,
So
chronic pain.
yes, chronic pain, but they need to have some physical manifestation. So we're unable to support mental illness solely on its own. And sometimes people will say, well, I'm depressed. Is that going to count against me? And then after they've told me what their situation is, well, who wouldn't be depressed? Um, so, well, let me read just a little bit from the piece that actually introduced me to Final Exit Network and Final Exit Network to me. So I wrote about my experience because I was so impressed and moved. And the next thing I knew, the essay appeared on the cover of the magazine. So I'm calling the client Marilyn. The Fenn volunteers arrived precisely at 2:30 as planned, and I marveled at how patient, knowledgeable, and personable they both were. Because Marilyn could scarcely see, I read out the checklist of items, while Marilyn impatiently agreed to each one. She articulated why she was intent on self-deliverance, reiterated that she knew exactly what she was doing, and was eager to carry out her task. We watched as she signed the document with determination. The volunteers then showed her how to assemble the equipment she'd ordered, instructing her step by step. Despite her requests, they repeatedly declined to do anything actually for her, insisting that she accomplish each task herself. With persistence and a bit of frustration, she assembled the hood, taping the plastic tube inside and securing the bottom with a headband. She connected the other end of the tube to the regulator, which she'd screwed under the canister. The volunteers emphasized that it might not be elegant, but it would be effective. In the middle of the proceedings, the phone rang, and Marilyn, without thinking, answered it. The three of us rolled our eyes as we listened to one half of a very long-winded conversation involving $11, which Marilyn promised to put in an envelope tomorrow. Don't let me answer the phone again, she requested after hanging up. The poignancy of the fact that there would not be a tomorrow was not lost on any of us. After Marilyn finished the sequence of tasks, she was asked again if she knew what would happen if she continued, if she wanted to change her mind, if she wanted to take a break. Adamantly, yes, no, and no. Jim will be driving back across the bridge and there'll be traffic later, she said. I tried to explain that I was here for the duration and not to worry about my traffic, but she remained focused on the details as well as the big picture. I was impressed and inspired by her resolve. Once she had decided where she wanted the event to take place, on a day bed with a sunny view of the bay, all was ready. After the brief demonstration, the volunteers explained that Marilyn will lose consciousness in about a minute and the entire process would take less than 15 minutes. Again, the three questions. Again, the impatient reply. With no ceremony or final words, the three of us watched as Marilyn turned the dial, pulled down the hood, and began inhaling. She closed her eyes as her breathing became shallow. One of the volunteers monitored her pulse. A few physical twitches, and soon she was gone. She looked peaceful. It was so sweet, simple, sad, and straightforward. I was moved by the simultaneously monumental and mundane moment we had witnessed. After weeks of careful preparation, the entire process took less than 2 hours from start to finish. I drove across the bridge, no traffic, and immediately joined Final Exit Network. Um, Jenny, do you want to talk about any highlights or lowlights of your experience as a guide?
Um, I do feel like when I've been able to help someone talk with their family members and get support from their family when they didn't think they were going to get it, that's definitely been a highlight. You know, it's really hard to just hold on to that all by yourself and not be able to have someone to share it with. And so when people are able to share it with their family members or other loved ones, I think that's kind of amazing. Um, I'm personally struck also by the mundane things that are happening on the day someone dies, and like just hearing like what they did, either the night before or the morning of. Like one woman bought a whole bunch of Snickers bars and she was eating them. She didn't normally eat candy, but that's what she wanted to do. And someone else went out and watered her garden one last time, and it's just kind of, oh my gosh, it is so poignant, but just kind of amazing, like what people, think about. Like, oh, somebody's last act is to put a bottle in the recycling bin. It just is kind of funny to me, but they spent so much time getting to this point, it kind of makes sense in a way that it's just going to be a little thing at the end that they do. So, and I really do like being able to help families and the what we are calling our client, have the confidence that things are going to work out okay because people are so stressed out about it. And that makes me, feel like I've really helped someone and somebody's family.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I often get expressions of deep, deep gratitude. Thanks for explaining the options. Thanks for shepherding the paperwork. And as Jenny suggests, there's a lot of humor in the anthology. There's one situation, I think Brian Reuter, our board president, wrote about a drumming circle prior to the exit. Somebody else asked if it would be okay if they had a shot of malt whiskey. So these stories really kind of normalize and humanize this these last few moments on Earth and the people taking control of their situation and knowing what they want and being able to get it. Um, do you want to read your part of your piece about your mom, Jenny?
Sure. I already mentioned about why I got involved with Finn because of my mother's health crisis. So my story, I don't even remember what it's called. Let me look at A Guide Makes All the Difference. So this story is kind of a cautionary tale of like why you should work with a guide. We are free. We don't cost anything. We will come fly to you. It's like all you have to do is pay for the equipment and get your equipment. And we will teach you what you need to know. So it's really not that hard. I mean, you do have to put in an application, but we're here and we want people to use our services. So anyway, so to set up the story, my mom had had a prior health crisis, and we found out about Finn, and she had put her kit together, so that was already there. Years went by, and mom's health declined. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and struggled to control her unstable blood sugars. Her arthritis crippled her hands to the extent that she couldn't garden or even hold a book. She had been a volunteer for a project to clothe low-income children, but she no longer had the physical stamina required and she had to quit. One of the final straws was developing cognitive decline and having her bridge partners ask her to leave their foursome because she was making so many mistakes. My mother prided herself on her intelligence, independence, and ability to be of service. At 79, she decided she had lived a long and wonderful life, but now this limited existence was intolerable, and she was ready to leave. In the meantime, California's End of Life Option Act from June 2016 had just gone into effect. We carefully studied its requirements. I doubted Mom would qualify since she did not have an end-stage disease with a 6-month or less life expectancy. But she was confident that her personal doctor of more than 30 years would support her, that her claim was that old age was a terminal illness and should qualify. When we went to visit him, he explained that my mother's request was his first, and he agreed to look into it. A week later, he told her she wasn't eligible for that life-ending option. She was furious and felt betrayed, but I reminded her that she had her Final Exit Network backup plan and everything was still in her closet. Suddenly, this was real, not a hypothetical what if. I started feeling sick to my stomach. Is she truly going to go through with this? Is she really ready? Am I? What would happen if this didn't work and she ended up in a coma? There was no way I was going to put a pillow over her face. And I didn't want to be directly involved with her death. I was the single mother of a teenager. I didn't know what the laws were regarding assisting a suicide, and we were both unwilling for me to go to jail. I strongly encouraged my mom to apply to the Final Exit Network's Exit Guide program, but since she had been rejected by her beloved doctor, she was worried she wouldn't be accepted. So she was on her own, and she didn't want to wait. She was already at the point she thought she was going to get to die, and she wasn't. So anyway, that's the end of what I'm reading. And then the rest of the story just talks about she did have 4 attempts. 2 of them were the final exit way, but it wasn't until I became a guide that I figured out what the problems were. The first time she had her old tank that was filled with 100% helium, but the night before she had kind of like loosened the valve a little tiny bit, and most of the gas had leaked out by the time she tried to use it. So, and she was by herself. I did not want to be there with her when she was doing this. And after that happened, we went to Target and got more tanks and hooked those up. And the next day it didn't work. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here? And we didn't know because she wasn't reading her Final Exit newsletters that the helium was now mixed with oxygen. So there wasn't enough helium in there to kill her. And so then she resorted to some other methods, which I'm not going to discuss right now. But, she finally did die and it was a peaceful death. So anyway, that's what the rest of the story is kind of about.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful story. And I knew Jenny's mom quite well. In fact, lived with her briefly, and had encouraged Jenny to set down this story because it's, as she says, it's such a cautionary tale. Don't let this happen to you. Um, and what was I going to say? Oh, and so Jenny and I did inadvertently work on one case together. I wasn't as a FEN representative, but a dear friend of mine who was in his mid-90s applied to Final Exit Network and was accepted. And Jenny began working with him. But unfortunately, he became bedbound and realized that he was not going to be able to do the physical capability to make his own death happen. Fortunately for him, he did actually apply and was approved for medical aid in dying. So I think about a month ago, he called me and said, Saturday, 1 o'clock, be here. And it wasn't a request, it was a command. And I went down and I had never witnessed a medical aid in dying death, and I was holding one hand, his niece was holding the other. The hospice worker was helping with administer the medications. He had never done it, the hospice worker. So, but it was very sweet, sad, straightforward, and my friend was so happy to get what he wanted. So one of the things I tell my clients is that things can change. Uh, People say, "Oh, I'm going to Switzerland if it ever comes to that," or "Oh, no, I'll go buy a gun." Uh, so you know, you can have a plan in place, and then one situation shifts. So one thing is to be flexible. Um, Let me see.
Do
What else?
you do you want to
Yeah,
talk
what?
about the genesis of the anthology, or do we already
Yeah,
cover that?
yeah, thanks, Jenny. So um I think I realized that Ben was turning 20, and I had been reading and or writing uh pieces for the anthology, for the newsletter. And I think I had insomnia one night, and I laid out all the newsletters and started going through. Oh, and also conversations with Brian Ruder, our board president, and he kept saying the importance of personal stories. Personal stories. How can we collect more personal stories? And I went through and pulled out, and I realized you have a lot of personal stories. And so I started compiling them, and I imagined, oh, I would do more interviews, and I would do solicit more personal narratives. And um, I saw, well, we're halfway there. So I contacted Brian, and he said, "Yeah, this is a good idea. Keep reminding me." And so for over a year, I reminded Brian, "Do we want to do this anthology? What's the timing like? We should move if we want to celebrate and commemorate Fenn's 20th anniversary." And finally, the board met and approved it, and Fenn assembled a team, and I worked with them closely, and we argued about the title and the punctuation and the format and this and that, and it finally all got pulled together. So we solicited a short piece from Derek Humphrey, another piece from Faye. We got Chris's blurb on the back, and it all just fell together just in the nick of time. Oh, speaking of blurbs, I did want to read one uh, from a close friend of mine. Uh, he's a pastor in the United Church of Christ, and his blurb says, "Clergy, chaplains, and spiritual directors who deal with end-of-life issues will find this anthology a vital resource." And I was so happy to have that blurb to help, because um, he had supported many exits during the AIDS crisis. And he said, "Oh, we kept a copy of Final Exit by the bed. It was our Bible." Um, so I thought to have the endorsement of a religious person. Yes, thank you, Faye. Um, and the one thing about the print version of Final Exit is that it's still I think all the print versions talk about helium, and as Jenny said, now party helium is not 100%. It's cut with oxygen, so it won't necessarily do what we want it to do. So so nitrogen is now the recommendation. So it's important to have all the information either through the Peaceful Pill Handbook or Final Exit 2020 if you're not going through the Final Exit Network route. Um, let's see. Anything else?
I got something else I wanted to just bring up.
Yes, please.
One of the things that my clients often ask is how are they going to know when the right time is? Because most people, who are coming to us, they don't have like a terminal illness with an end date, that where they're just naturally going to be ready to go. And we do have to tell people that they're going to have to leave some good days on the table. You're not going to be able to wait until the very last minute. And this is especially, important for people who are having some kind of cognitive decline, because we don't want them to get to the point where they're not able to, you know, voice or express, their wishes anymore. And so that's really hard. And that's not something that we can help people with. I mean, I'm not going to know when it's going to be somebody's, last time, but it is something that I get asked a lot. And I'm pretty impressed with people seem to kind of intuitively know, like most of the time, when the right time is. And when, they've worked with a guide and they're sort of, they say like, well, maybe sometime within the next year. Well, our applications remain open for 3 years. After 3 years, if you haven't exited, you have to reapply. But um, so that's that. Once we get the kit together and they've had a practice, usually the anxiety about, oh, I need to go right now. They suddenly, most people start feeling more relaxed and they calm down because now they have a way out. And so most of the time, they actually exit quite a bit longer than or farther out than when they thought they were going to originally. But I've just noticed that a lot of people tend to want to make sure that they've hit, certain landmarks. Like one woman wanted to be able to have one last Mother's Day with, her daughters. Another person wanted to see, her grandson graduate. Another person wanted to go to one last dog show. There were just like these different things that people had, and it just made it, they kind of gave themselves a target. And then they didn't have to, commit. And another thing too is that we will come twice. So if someone says that they want to exit, and we've chosen a date, we're flying out there and we get there, but then, they say, "Oh, I've changed my mind." We're like, "Hey, that's okay. We're willing to come back one more time." So we don't want anybody to ever feel like they're being pushed into this or that, they have a deadline and they have to meet it. So anyway, that was one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, that's important, and that's something that comes up at the Chosen Death Forum, which is a monthly uh, group meeting for Final Exit Network members, sort of based on the Death Cafe model. So we break into small groups of 10, 12, 15, and we talk about issues, all these issues. And one of them that comes up regularly is, how will I know when it's time? And as Jenny suggests, uh, intuitively, when bad days start outnumbering the good days, people get a sense of it. But I have another short illustration of something that Jenny just mentioned. Uh, my friend and colleague Miriam tells this story. She was working with someone uh, with cognitive decline, and the education visit took place, and then scheduled the second visit. But there was a family event. I don't know what, a birthday or a grandchild or something, and it was a little bit far in the future. And Miriam was a little concerned, but okay. So she went back at the assigned time, and the fellow experiencing cognitive decline had no idea who she was, what was happening. And so obviously the exit could not continue. Fortunately, in this particular scenario, a few weeks later, the family called and said, he's totally coherent. He's a little annoyed. Why aren't you here? Why didn't this happen? Fortunately, um, Miriam lived close enough and she could hop in the car, get to the guy. Yes, indeed, he knew just what was happening and wanted to move forward. And so she was able to support his exit. So this, again, has a happy ending, but not. So one really needs to make sure that one knows what one's window of opportunity is, and and proceed accordingly. Um,
I think I also just reminded me of one more thing too, is that
mhm.
we cannot help people who are in nursing homes. So if you're that far gone, that's not something that we can help with. We can help if you're living in a senior living facility and you're not being monitored all the time and you're able to lock your door, but we're not able to help people who are in nursing homes. or rehabs or whatever we call them.
Or yeah, assisted living.
Assisted living,
Because sort of the definition, Lowry had to explain this to me. The definition of assisted living means the person can't care for themselves, and so would not be able to do the physical requirements to.
Yeah, it's
to
more that's part of it, but it's more about us, being caught, or they're them not letting us follow through with it, because there's no privacy.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things, as we say, nothing we do is illegal. And by the same token, we want to make sure that the volunteers, the family, anybody, everybody is not at any risk, because we're trying to normalize this, and many family members or um, uh, law enforcement are not familiar what just happened, and so it can get complicated, and we try to minimize that. Um, should I read one of those letters of gratitude from a client and then we'll take questions, Jenny, or do we have more we want to say?
I don't think I have anything else to say.
Okay.
At this moment.
At this moment, yes, we have. So why don't we end our part of it, and then we're more than happy to field questions. So this is the very last piece in the anthology, and it's called Blessed by the Universe by Anonymous, and it's addressed to the coordinator. I wanted to write my thanks to you before time runs out. You've smoothed the way for me greatly, and my guide is following suit. I feel very blessed by the universe. Something I want to capture and share with you and Fan is the great sense of peace I feel now that I'm closing whole areas of what has been a fulfilling life. It feels right to be closing out belongings and past accomplishments, to linger over pictures before I discard them, and to be able to take time while I'm still well enough to rest in my gratitude for everyone and everything. Under ordinary circumstances, I think one would be too ill or stressed to have this luxury of time for reflection and appreciation. I'm so glad I started the process back in the fall, as my tumor is relentless in its progression, and I emphasize how important starting is. Once begun, you and the organization have made it all move forward so smoothly. I thank you deeply for your commitment, kindness, and caring, and I wish you a long and happy life. So that's just one example of the kinds of expression of gratitude that Jenny and I often encounter, because we are literally there at the end. So, okay. So now we're happy to take questions.
Okay, so we've got one question from Christine Wright. With MAID, cause of death on the death certificate is the diagnosed terminal illness. What does the FEN process have on the death certificate?
Suicide.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a deal breaker. People don't want that on the death certificate, and other people don't care a whit. But that's the facts.
Another question comes from Chris Palmer, and he asks, do fence coordinators encourage the use of inert gas, or do you give equal attention to other modes of self-deliverance?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. So many times I refer people to a page on our website, or I will actually send it to them, called Options for Hastening Death. And the first option is very passive. One is allowed to refuse medical treatment. So antibiotics or whatever one is taking, it turns out that pneumonia or sepsis are not the worst way to go if one is thinking of hastening one's death. Another option is voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, another passive mode that doesn't require any dealing with doctors or anyone really, but it does require the support of at least the mouth being moistened and possibly the administration of morphine. And then it goes on from there. There's the Swiss option, There's several clinics. They seem to be coming and going. And Final Exit Network has a dedicated volunteer who's been shepherding people through that process. And sometimes it sounds a little romantic. Oh, I'm just going to go to Switzerland. Well, it's complicated. And if someone is at that stage of the game, is it really feasible for them financially or physically to get themselves halfway around the world? So I've had clients who thought they were going to do that and then decided that's not really going to work. I refer people to the Peaceful Pill Handbook and Final Exit 2020, and then I explain how Final Exit Network support services work. And many times, I'm surprised people contact FEN and don't know about our support services. So I had a case recently where someone said, "Oh yeah, we're going to try to get mom to Switzerland." And I said, "Well, from what you're telling me, that sounds like it's going to be a challenge. Have you considered this?" Well, they immediately switched gears. Oh yes, it's much more viable. So thanks for that question, Chris.
Let's see, Jane Sandquist had a question about the less restrictive things like the person in their late 80s losing their eyesight or whatever. And I responded and just want to make sure you guys go to all 50 states, correct?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter per state. I mean, all your requirements are the same. If I just say you're nationwide, same restrictions, every state, no matter where you live, you can pick up the phone and you can get help.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's important because people often start, well, I don't live in a right to die state, so what are my options? And as you just explained, we serve all 50 states.
Thank you.
Um,
And
go.
another question comes from, did you want to follow up to that, Christine?
No, go ahead.
All right. Another question comes from Judith Stang. She says, should the responses to the checklist be audio or video recorded? This would be to protect the guide and FEN. So that's her question.
I'm not sure what the checklist is here, but because I don't know what that is. We don't do recordings. I mean, we've talked about that, but we don't. I mean, we're not doing anything illegal, so we're kind of not totally worried about it. And we often will leave, before the authorities are notified, and so they don't even know we're here. If family members, we just ask them to just answer the questions that the police ask you, and most of the time they say, "Oh, did you know that this was going to happen?" And they may say, "Oh, how did they, where did they find their tank?" I mean, they might have some questions like that, but most of the time they don't ask anything where you'd have to say, "Oh, Fenn was here and this woman named Jenny and her associate guide were here." Like, you don't need to volunteer anything. So, I'm personally not worried about, getting into trouble because I didn't do anything wrong.
Well, and I should contextualize that piece because that was many, many years ago. And at that point, and I should say that the guides were Brian and Lowry, so that was my introduction to them. And at that time, the protocol was to remove the equipment. That has since changed. So the equipment is left in place, and it sounds like there's no longer a checklist. So we're continually tweaking our protocol.
Well, we do have a checklist like, are the curtains drawn? Is the door locked? I mean, stuff like that, but that's not, I don't think that's what they were talking about. Yeah.
No, and when I'm talking to my clients by phone, and I'm not the coordinator for California, I urge them discretion because some people are so excited about this option. Oh, I can't wait to tell my neighbor. Oh, I can't wait to tell my niece. Well, you're just at the beginning of this. Let's not tip your hand. Not everyone is supportive of this. We've had situations where the physician has tried to contact Final Exit Network because they weren't supportive. And there's all kinds of things that can derail the process. So best to keep one's cards close to the chest until they start working with the guide. And then they and the guide can figure out what's appropriate to say to whom. Is that right, Jenny?
Yeah, but we generally, we feel like it's okay for people to say, I'm considering, taking my own life at some point if, things keep getting worse. Like we actually like that so that people are not going to be surprised. Um, but as far as like the exact day or something, or, oh, I have a kit in my back closet, like that kind of stuff, you don't need to tell anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And that's what I tell them. I say, you can say, oh, I don't know how much longer I can endure this, but don't say, oh, I just got off the phone with Jim at Final Exit Network, and guess what? That might be a little premature.
So Pamela Williams would like to know how compatible are these methods with postmortem organ donation?
You're not able to do donation after this because your body is picked up by the coroner and it goes to the morgue and it's going to be sitting there for a while. So that's not a possibility.
Okay. Debbie Chaddock asks, how much assistance is legally allowed when it comes to the purchase and delivery of the tank or other equipment? Is it sufficient if no physical help is provided during the procedure, or if the person who delivered the equipment is not present during the procedure?
This is like a tricky one, and it probably is actually, made every state's going to decide what they consider to be physical assistance. So, sometimes we're like, oh, I mean, do all of you people know what TaskRabbit is? It's like this online app, and you can tell somebody to go do like an errand for you. Well, okay, that person who's picking up a tank of gas is not going to know what it's for. And if that person delivers it to you, we kind of think like that's probably going to be okay. And that person's not going to get in trouble because they didn't even know like why they went and did something. And of course, we do have a lot of family members who will go, pick up the tank for someone. But I just really, encourage people to have your family member drive you there, but go in and like, get it yourself. We're very careful. We want everybody to buy all of their equipment using their own credit cards, so everything in case there is an investigation, it shows that they are the one that, got everything. So, I mean, it's a tricky thing that has to kind of be discussed, on a case by case basis. And we try and work it out so that nobody else is involved, but sometimes people do get involved.
Yeah, I say the same thing. Make sure that there are only the person's fingerprints, virtual or otherwise. So if someone is saying, oh, I'll go buy the canister for you, use your credit card or pay cash, don't put anybody at risk, because we don't know exactly how it might unfold.
Barbara Hollowell asks, do many clients focus on their feelings about having to leave a dear pet behind?
This does come up, and we do kind of have a rule that animals have to be rehomed before the exit because we don't want to have to worry about some animal escaping, and because we usually have the death, someone notify the authorities the day after. So people, I mean, people need to find a new home for their animals. And I mean, it has been a thing. Um, and usually people do that. I mean, it's just the responsible thing to do is to find a place for your animals to land and, give them up a day early, the day before you die.
Our own Faye Gersh asks, a Hemlock member in her senior residence was planning to exit with helium. Someone ratted on him and his tank was confiscated and a 24/7 guard was assigned at his expense. Is that legal? Don't know if you know that answer to that, but
We're not lawyers.
Yeah, no, I don't know the answer, but I do know that the friend, the 95-year-old who Jenny had been working with, had a similar situation. He was very clear that he wanted to hasten his death. And I can't remember what he said to whom, but he was under psychiatric evaluation for at least 24, if not 48 hours. So that's why there's the process of mandatory reporting. If someone thinks that you're at risk to doing harm to yourself, they may take it upon themselves to report you to the authorities. So I'm really sorry about that situation, but just another reason to be cautious and not talk about it to people who don't. It's none of anybody's business.
And I do think some places have like rules about this, like I don't, it probably you don't find something that says you cannot commit suicide here. But I mean, there are some things, but it doesn't seem to me that somebody could legally go in and take your stuff. But I don't really know. I did have a client in Santa Cruz who, oh my God, her mouth. She was just telling everybody. She was like going to the, farmer's market and telling the guy who sold flowers, like, oh, tomorrow's gonna be the day. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, like, and it was like, do not talk about this. But she, of course, talked about it so much that she had three different people who reported her, like they were mandated reporters. And she had a visit from a social worker. She lived in assisted living. But they just came in and they just asked her, are you depressed? Do you want to die? And she's like, yes, I do. And that's my, it's my right to be able to do that. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just left. They did not take her stuff. I don't know if they even knew she had any, had her kit together, but it probably just really depends on where you live and what happens.
And
And I am sorry that that happened to that person too.
and just as a follow-up, because you've used the expression, but I want our audience to understand who are mandated reporters, what that means and who they are, who holds those credentials. That
Jim, I mean,
physicians, social workers, yeah, they're required to report anybody who might be considering suicide.
but it has to be your doctor or your,
Right.
social worker or whatever. It's like if somebody, a friend of yours is a doctor and they know about this, if you're not their patient, they don't have to say something.
Right. But just so our audience knows that you may
Yeah,
not.
okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, thanks for that clarification. Yeah, and when my friend did medical aid in dying, he was quite the pioneer in a lot of different arenas. And I think he was almost a little bit disappointed that he wasn't the first person to use MAID at his senior facility. He was number 4. So it's becoming, I think, a little bit more normalized.
So Nancy Walker has a question. I thought the reason for removing equipment related to insurance, which sometimes doesn't pay off if the cause of death is suicide.
Again, I don't really know what the laws are with everybody's insurance. I had heard that if it's been more than a year that you've had your insurance, the suicide clause thing doesn't apply. But I mean, I really think it's a case by case, insurance by insurance thing. Um,
Yeah, Jenny's absolutely right. And the reason I believe that defense protocol changed is that our legal counsel informed us that if to continue removing the equipment could put the guides in legal risk for tampering with a death scene. So
yeah.
that's why we've changed that. So it had nothing to do with insurance.
And then Faye had a follow-up question. She noted that Derek had always recommended for people to leave a note explaining why they were doing this and that nobody had helped them. Is that still a recommendation that comes from Fen?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm working with a client, I have them put together a death packet, so it's got like their note that says that they've done this all on their own. It's a suicide note that's just really for the authorities. It's not one that they have to, tell their friends and loved ones how much they cared about them. It's just like, I did this on my own. Nobody helped me. It's a note to leave behind. I also like to have people write a note that they put on the door of whatever, let's say it's their bedroom, that says, I've taken my own life. Please contact so and so. So in case anybody does show up when they're not supposed to, they will have some warning before going through that door that they're going to find a dead body. Um, Also, within this packet, we have them leave a final exit guide so that, or there's a particular chapter that goes through all of, the steps for doing this. So it shows that the person knew how to do this on their own. And I always have people write out the instructions in their own handwriting about, what they need to do next. And especially if they have cognitive decline, because I want to make sure that it was clear that this, to whoever comes there, that this person knew what they were doing and they had written it down. So those are some of the things that, are right there. And also maybe their driver's license. So, the body ID could be made right away. Sometimes their, Neptune Society card. I mean, it just really depends on, if there's family members around or not. But we try and, make sure that all the necessary things are together right next, on a table near the body.
Irana Shepard has a question. How advanced does cognitive decline need to be to qualify?
I don't think very advanced, but this is something that the medical review team, decides. I mean, I don't even know if Jim and I could really speak to that. Jim, what do you think?
No, I mean, I've had situations where the person thought they were experiencing cognitive decline. It needs to be documented.
Right.
So, and of course, we've talked about window of opportunity and how will I know when is the right time. So, they need to have documentation that they have cognitive impairment and decline, and then the medical review committee makes a determination, and based on the documentation, they may say it's too soon or yes, it's approved. But if they miss that window of opportunity, as my example showed, then they're stuck. And their only option is to put in place, or to have put in place, a supplemental advance directive for cognitive decline or for dementia, and then hope that their support system will honor them not being fed or offered liquid. But there's no guarantee to any of that. And Chris, you could probably speak to that a little bit. But anyway, that's sort of out of our jurisdiction.
I think that there's a lot of, if they're that far gone, they're probably in assisted living, and so that's kind of like outside of what we can help anyway. Because a lot of assisted living facilities will not honor the VSED, or because they're afraid of being sued.
Okay. Barbara Hollowell asks, if you have a prepaid cremation pickup service, will your body still have to involve a coroner and mortuary?
Yes, because the police are called, and then the police will show up, and also like right at the same time, the EMTs will get there because they want to see if they can bring the body back. And when everybody is like, okay, this person's really died, then they call in the coroner who has to come and make sure that there's been no foul play. And for California, I only work in California, and every single one of my people has had to have an autopsy to make sure that it's okay. But, the coroner will just call up the, Neptune Society or whatever you've got and say, hey, the body's ready, and then they'll come pick it up.
So Bruce B comments, free, yet a Fed member might fly to the location. So who pays for the exit guides to come, whether it's once or twice? His question was free with a donation, correct?
Nope, it's free, free, free. We
Free.
have a endowments, and that a whole huge portion of that goes to pay for the exit guide program. And so that's, we have membership fees and things like that. That covers the expenses. So the only thing that the person needs their only out-of-pocket expenses, and it comes to be around maybe $350 for all the stuff that they need to buy. And once they're in the program and they're working with us and they've told their family members, then we send them our secret shopping list so that they can go buy all their stuff.
Yeah, and just to echo that, so we're all volunteers, and we're reimbursed for any out-of-pocket expenses, whether it's travel, hotel, food. I'm even reimbursed for the postage stamps that I use to send information to people. So there's no cost. It used to be that one was required to be a Final Exit Network member. That has changed too over the years. So as Jenny says, it's free, free, free.
Right. So the next question comes from Susan Hedgepath, and I think you may not be able to answer this. This is really a question about medical aid in dying, but it does give some context as to different methods used. So is it still the case that MAID involves drinking a voluminous, thick, slushy drink? And it sounds unpleasant. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, I can only speak to my recent experience, which is one. So it's not voluminous. It's bitter tasting, but it's about 2 ounces of apple juice with whatever it is, and it has to be taken very quickly before the person starts falling asleep. So it's nasty, but it's not thick and voluminous. And End of Life Choices California is a really good resource for the specifics of how the MAID protocol works. Also, A Better Exit is a terrific organization here in California about working with the MAID protocol and the restrictions. So go ahead.
And just as a follow-up, Susan, I can say that the reason that you're required with medical aid in dying is to drink 2 ounces of fluid, as Jim has said, that has the medication in it, is because our law stipulates that it has to be ingested. So it either needs to be something that you can drink, and for those who can't swallow, it has to be introduced through a feeding tube or a rectal tube, but the person has to completely independently do it. So that's the reason.
Bruce B asks, is the nitrogen tank a straightforward purchase, or is one supposed to bone up ahead of time on whatever a tank of nitrogen is usually used for?
It's a pretty straightforward thing. Usually when you go to the local, gas store, they don't even question why you're there. You just tell them what you want and you give them the money and you go. But we tell people, if they do ask you, you can say something like, oh, my granddaughter is involved in competitive bicycle racing and she said she wanted this for her tires because it's supposed to be really good for bike racing. And I don't really understand it, but that's what she wants, So we just have them like make up a story like that. We coach people on what to say.
And I guess I'm just going to interrupt here because I also thought that you needed 99% nitrogen, which would be the cooking grade nitrogen. And I know somebody, who went to the gas store and couldn't get it because they didn't have cooking grade nitrogen. They did the week later for them, but so I guess that's the question: doesn't have to be cooking grade?
No, we don't really. That 1% of oxygen is not going to make a big difference.
So Chris Palmer,
not like, right now, like the helium tanks, I seriously think are like 10% helium and 90% oxygen. It's like a way like, off balance, the new helium tanks. So
Chris Palmer asks another question of y'all. Why isn't Fen better known in the US? Why doesn't Fen have a bigger national profile? I'm astonished how few people have heard of Fen. What needs to happen to help Fen go mainstream?
That's a question for you, Chris, being on the board. But it's absolutely my experience since I'm a first responder. Oh, I wish I'd known about this when my parents were failing. I'm so glad to understand the support services you offer. And exactly as you're saying, Chris, why doesn't everyone know more about this? And I'm hoping that the anthology sheds some light on this availability. My dream is that it would be in libraries and bookstores, in people's homes. Oh, read chapter 12, and then you'll understand what I want to have happen. Look at page 145. That's what I want. And to use this as a tool to normalize and start the discussion with family members, because what we find is that family members or physicians or whomever it catches them off guard. But if they can read something or watch a film, it creates a little buffer, and then they can say, oh, well, now I understand it a little differently. Well, I thought I was against it, but I love you so much now. Yeah, I can support you with this. So, but in terms of spreading the word, yes, please, all of you, help spread the word, because we're not advocating anything. All we're doing is offering an option. And to my mind, I'm a retired librarian. knowledge is power. So hopefully no one will ever need to use any of these options, but to know that they exist bring people solace.
And I mean, as a guide, I have business cards. They don't have my name on them, but they have final exit name on, final exit information. Every time I go to a healthcare professional, I hand one out. I recently had to, put my own dog down and I had like a visiting vet come to do it. And I said, "Did you know you can do this for people?" And I handed her a couple cards so she could hand them out. And I actually have to say, one of my clients was a referral from a friend that I had given a card to. So, that helps. But I also want to say I'm personally in the climate that we live in, I'm kind of scared for like there to be like all this, information about final exit because I'm worried that the whole thing is going to get shut down. So I think I don't know, I'm not a professional in this, but I just feel like we need to step very lightly, I don't know what the answer is. I want people to know about it, but only the right people to know about it, You know what I mean?
So maybe then that'll answer Jurgen Danwart, sorry if I massacred your name, said Fenn had a great cross-American forum in Nevada in 2018. Is there anything planned like this in the near future?
That would be a question for Chris or Gary. Not to our knowledge. We're on the front line. We just do what we do.
Yeah, and Gary has his hand up, so maybe he's got some. Yeah.
I was there. It was a great conference. We had many people there, outside speakers, pretty prominent media folks came in. It's cost a ton of money, and we assessed it afterwards in terms of what we really got out of it in terms of additional membership or donations, and it really didn't seem to pay off. So it's kind of left a questionable reputation around Fenn doing something like that again. However, I'm not on the board now, and it might happen again. With regard to people finding out about Fenn and getting comfortable with Fenn, I'd like to report that the Good Death Society blog is currently getting 650 views per day. It's more readers more rapidly than we ever have before. So perhaps we have turned some small corner there where people are availing themselves of information about who we are and what we stand for.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, that subscribing to that blog is very informative and educational. The other thing is that we have a very robust speakers bureau. So if you're a member of any group anywhere, you can request a speaker and they can either be in person or via Zoom and present some of the same similar information to help spread the word. So yeah, there's a lot of avenues.
Okay, we've got maybe one final question here. My family wants, this is again from Barbara Hollowell. My family wants to be there for me when and if it's time, but are wary about remaining for arrival of police, etc. Advice about that?
I personally do not think it's a great idea for family to be at one of these exits. It's very peaceful and quick for the person who's going through the exit. They become unconscious, within 30 to 60 seconds, and then they're out and they're not aware of anything. It's, some people apparently on our team a long time ago actually went as far as like passing out and, for them, and then they came back, said that it was like being under general anesthesia, so they're out. But as someone who's watching what's going on, people can be making involuntary movements, sounds, eyes open. They're there with a bag on their head. The bag is completely inflated the entire time. It's not like some horror torture movie where it's like sucked to their face. But it is not, I do not think a loved one should be watching that and have that be their last memory. The few people who insisted they could handle it that I had been with had a really hard time. So I just don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a better idea for the family members to, you know, say their goodbyes and then leave. And that way, you know, they can usually, if, especially if there's like a partner, you know, who's still living in the home, to have them go with their family or their friends. We'll do the exit, we'll leave, they come back maybe 4 hours later and say, you know, call the police and say my, you know, partner has killed themselves. And, you know, when they get there, just say, yes, I knew this was going to happen. And we left on purpose to give them, you know, privacy to do this. We didn't want to be there when it happened. And, you know, just be truthful. So, it's not like watching a dog being put down. It's not like something, you know, they just go quietly into the night. There is, I don't mean to scare anybody, but there is like some movement and it can be a little bit alarming. And every single exit I've been to has been different. And I just, that's my opinion about it.
Thank you all. Thanks so much. Faye, did you want to have closing comments?
I could comment all day. I'm proud of this organization. I sort of started it with the Caring Friends program back 20 years ago, and I love the way it's developed, and I love the asset that it has been. I was going to say that we did have a meeting after Nevada, I think the one in Chicago, which was invaded by Not Dead Yet, when they were very rude and terrible. That's, I don't think, why we're not having another one, but it is expensive, but it's very worthwhile if we do get a bequest or something from somebody and who says, let's have another meeting, a national conference, would be wonderful. We used to have them. We used to have national Hemlock conferences too. I think it would be a very good idea. We belong to the World Federation of Right to Die Societies. That is Hemlock of San Diego does, and that will be meeting in Japan in June, I think.
No, it's Thanksgiving weekend next year of 2026.
Oh, Thanksgiving. Okay.
Yeah, we have to give up Thanksgiving to go there. And Finn's a member of that too, I'm sure, because Lowry's been there.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So is that wrapped up then, Faye?
Yes, it's wrapped up. Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see such eager, attentive faces, such very good questions. And thank you, Jim, and thank you, Jenny, for this excellent presentation. I learned a lot myself. So bye, everybody. Good life, good death to you all.
Thank you all.